welcome to Crypto Pluto, the channel where we discuss cryptocurrencies. So, as I said before, this channel will be divided into three parts. The first part will be technical analysis, the second part will be reviews of coin and discussion of psychological and philosophical aspects of cryptocurrency trading, and the third part will be Solidity programming. Before we start the programming part, I want to tell you guys about something I've been doing. Starting February, every month I'll be giving away $50 worth of bitcoins to a random subscriber. To participate, you have to subscribe, you have to turn on the notification to this channel, and in any one of my videos you have to leave a comment with your wallet address. So having that out of the way, let's start. Before we start the actual programming, I want to talk about a very big way blockchain is going to transform and revolutionize the world, and that is with Web 3.0. So what does that mean? Web 1.0 was when the internet first came out. You had websites with very basic information, fonts, text, etc., and you could just go there and browse through the information. With Web 2.0, we came up with more sophisticated engines, sophisticated softwares that could do very complex operations like Google, Facebook, YouTube. You had accounts, you had friends, you could send friend requests, you could upload videos, you could comment on those videos, you had blog sites, all that stuff. What Web 3.0 does is that it decentralizes the internet. And the reason why it's very revolutionary, why it's very powerful, is because it takes power from the few and gives it to the many. It takes control from centralized institution and gives it to the mass. And what that does, it makes censorship, it makes false information, it makes false news and propaganda impossible. And the beautiful thing with technology is that you can't stop. Once it's there, you can't stop it. Because it's the technical know-how, it's in people's head, it's inside people's head. There are people that know how to do it. So even if you take it down, there are people that can build it again from scratch. So having said all that, let us begin. With programming, there are some things you need to understand. That there are certain structures. First of all, programming is very syntax sensitive. That your syntax has to be exactly accurate. Otherwise, you can't expect a result. Number two is there are certain keywords that you need to understand. And let's first start with variables. So what is a variable? A variable is where you store data, simply put. What it means is, say for example, you're writing a program where people can register their dogs with vets, right? So you would need to store the dog's height, say for example. So for height, you would probably use an integer, say 65 centimeters, right? So where you can store integer values in most languages is called int or int, and in Solidity we also have uint or unsigned int, meaning it's only positive value. You can't put a negative sign in front of it. We need unsigned int for many cases. Say for example, the supply of a coin, it can't be negative, so that the supply of a coin, the value would be stored as an unsigned int. We also have address. So what it does is it stores the address of a wallet. So say for example, you have your address and you can store it in the address variable. How you declare the variable is that first you declare the variable type and then you give it a name. This name could be whatever. It could be ABC. And then you finish the line of code with a semicolon. It's almost like a full stop in a sentence. It signifies the ending of a line. Okay, so let us begin. For this programming, we will use Remix as a platform, as an IDE. The best framework, in my opinion, is Truffle, but for learning, Remix is really good. So let us begin. So we will, once you go to the Remix link that I will give in the description box, you will see a default smart contract already written in the Ethereum blockchain. The thing is, I personally believe that Ethereum has scalability issues with which later cryptocurrencies like EOS solves. But Ethereum is a very good starting point. So we'll start with that. We will learn we will learn programming on the EOS blockchain later. But let us start with Ethereum now. So we have this default smart contract written. We will ignore that and create our own contract. We will name it MyCoin, say for example. So now we have MyCoin. The first thing we need to do is we need to define the version of Solidity we are using. So the version we will be using for this will be 0.4.0, and for that we need to type pragma solidity and the version number, or we can just copy paste it from here. So we'll just copy paste it from here. Now this is a smart contract, so we need to start by saying that this is a smart contract. We do that by saying that this is a smart contract. We type contract and then we give it a name. This name does not have to be the same as this name, but convention is that the convention is that we name it the same as the name of the file. So we will name it mycoin, and then we will begin. So this is a block of code. Whatever goes inside this block of code, inside these curly braces, belongs to the contract mycoin. Okay. So the first feature of our coin is that it will have an address. It will hold an address. So let's do that. The address of the initiator, the address of the person who started this contract. Okay. Next, it will also have the balance of that person. The balance of the person inside the address. Okay. So how do we do that? We do it by mapping address equal to arrow and uint, and then we give it a name. This name could be whatever, but for better understanding we'll name it balance. Now what did I just do there? Mapping says that every mapping, what it does is that the variable type on the right will have a variable type of the type on the left attached to it. What it means in simple terms is that every address will have an unsigned int attached to it, and that unsigned int will show the balance inside that address, the number of token inside that address. Okay, so we do it like this. Then we will have a constructor. What is a constructor? A constructor is a function. What is a function? A function is a set of instructions that gets executed when that function is called. So the constructor function is called by default as soon as the contract gets initiated. So the constructor function, the name of the function will have to be the same. How does Solidity know that it is a constructor? Because the name is exactly the same as the contract. As you can also see here, they have a constructor function and the name is the same as the contract. So you have so how you define functions is that you first say that it's a function, you give it a name, then you do open parenthesis, close parenthesis. Sometimes inside the parentheses you can pass argument, as we will see later, and then you end the block of code with curly braces. So now anything inside this block of code belongs to the mycoin function or the constructor. Okay, now inside this mycoin function I will set the address of the initiator as the address of the message dot sender. What does this mean? The person who called the function, the address of that person is known as message.sender. So the who called mycoin function, the person who initiated the contract, since mycoin is the constructor. So the person who called the mycoin function, his address gets saved into initiator. And the balance of that person, for the purpose of this lesson only, we will give everyone who initiates the contract a free balance of 100 tokens. So we do balance initiator equals 100. So now the balance of the initiator, which is the person who initiated the contract, is 100 tokens. Okay, now we will have two more functions. One is transfer and one is view balance. So let's first write the function transfer. What the function transfer does is, when it gets called, it transfers the money transfers the token from a given account to another account. So inside the parentheses, it takes a few arguments. What are arguments? So you can pass variables. When you call a function, you can give the function some data to work with. So the transfer functions, before it can execute the code inside its block, it needs some data. It needs some input data that it can work with. It needs to know who to take the money from. It needs to know who to send the money to, and it needs to know the amount of money it needs to send. So the initial data it needs, we need to put it inside the parentheses. So first, what kind of variable does it need? An address. So we say it's an address. We give it any name. Say for example, the address, we name it sender. And then we give the address of the receiver, we name it receiver. And then we have the unsigned int value. Now we have this block of code. Now what we are going to do is, we are going to have an if statement. An if statement checks if a certain conditions have been met within the code. So say for example, if we have an if statement which checks if the balance of the sender is, if he has enough money. So say the sender has 100 tokens, but he wants to send 150 tokens to the receiver. He cannot do that. So we have to check if his balance is greater than the amount of token he's trying to send. So we can say balance of the sender is greater than or equal to value then execute the code. Else, otherwise, just throw. What throw does is that it exits the code. It doesn't do anything. So if his balance is not greater than the value, don't do the transfer. Okay. Alright, so how do we actually do the transfer? Okay, so for the unsigned int here, we need this. Okay. So for the unsigned int, we do this, and now we have, so we subtract the money from the sender's account and we add the money to the receiver's account. So we will do sender balance sender minus equals value it's giving me an error and it's saying that the identifier is undeclared. Oh, that is because I didn't put the, no, it's fine. Balance receiver plus equals value. Okay, so we are done. So we are taking the balance out of the sender and adding the balance to the receiver. Another thing we need to do is we need to be able to view the balance to check we have done the coding right. So we'll name a function view balance and we'll have an address. So we can view the balance of which the function begs the question, which addresses value do we want to view. So it needs the initial input, and the initial input will be an address. So if we give it the address, it will give us the value of that address. So we say, for example, we name it wallet, so we want to view the balance of a wallet. So now this function, once we call this function gives us back a variable. As opposed to this transfer function, it didn't return us any variable, but this function will return us a variable. So we need to say that this function will return us the balance, right? So the balance is an unsigned integer, so this function returns us an unsigned integer. So it will just return balance of the wallet. We are done, guys. So let us see if we can compile it. Start to compile. It already auto-compiled. Okay. So now what we will do is we will create it is not okay. Let's see what errors we have. This is fine. Okay, let's change the name because I already had a MyCoin before, so maybe that's the problem. Let's change the name to ABCD actually, and then we have here ABCD and create. Okay. Okay, we are done. Okay, now let us take this address and view the balance first. So we copy it here and then we put the address here and view balance. So we have the view balance here, and let's look at the details. And sure as hell, the decoded output is 100. So the balance of this account right now is 100. Okay, now let us initiate the transfer. So the sender will be the same guy. So we put it here. The receiver will be another address, say this one. And let's copy this address. So the receiver here is this guy. So we put it in quotes, the address. So the receiver is this guy, and then we put 25. So the receiver is receiving 25 tokens. And let us do the transfer. The transfer is done. Now we want to view the balance of this guy. We want to view the balance of this guy. We do view balance and then we go to the details, and the decoded output is 25. We want to view, let's view the balance of the first guy who had 100 tokens, and the balance of the first guy right now is 75, as you can see here. So this is just the beginning, guys. We will make it more complicated, and by the end of it we will have a token as sophisticated as some of the best tokens out there. But today what I really want you to take away is the basics, and that's it today. Leave a comment down below if you have any questions. Like this video, and I'll see you guys next time.